In the name of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Today we hear about the parable of the foolish rich man. And you hear it is a very short gospel where man has brought forth a plentiful harvest of his crops. And his coffers, his grain where he stores his grain, are not large enough to hold this plentiful crop that he had produced this year. And so he was put in this predicament of what he should do. And as we hear, he said, well, I'm going to tear down those barns and build bigger ones so I can hold all the treasures, all the crops of the earth that I have brought forth this year. And there's a kind of a turn to this parable, to this story. It sounds great to all of us, right? Well, he had a great crop, and he's going to be able to have an easy life, at least here in the immediate short term, because he has such great riches. But God comes into play, and it says, what a fool you are, because tonight your soul's going to be required of you. Tonight you're dying. And what good is all those crops going to be to you? What good of it? And so we are left thinking to, well, what could he have done with those crops differently? Because he's going to die, so these crops are going to be left to whoever, maybe his family, or to whoever has control over his land after he's gone. Whatever, he doesn't get a say in it after this point. He has no say in it. He has no control over these crops that he has got, these riches that God has blessed him with. And so this is why he's a fool. He's a fool because he didn't prioritize his life properly. You have to remember that Christ, in his preaching and his teaching, oftentimes he's not teaching to wealthy people. He's preaching to the lowly. He's preaching to those who don't have a voice in the world. He's preaching to fishermen and to people who would understand about farming. These people are not wealthy people. But oftentimes Christ uses these parables about money. And I always thought to myself, well, that's weird that he's always preaching about money to people that are poor. What lesson is it in them if they have no money that it's bad to have money? And so you have to understand that Christ is not necessarily speaking about wealth, so to speak, though it is. It is about wealth on the surface. But if you dig deeper, it's about prioritizing our lives. It's about what is most important in our lives. And because we can die at any moment, brothers and sisters, each breath is a gift from God, we need to be very much diligent of that. We prioritize God first. When we die, we cannot take our wealth with us. We cannot take our belongings with us. If we are not blessed with great wealth and great possession, oftentimes the little we do have, we hold on to it even tighter. I know this to be true. That what little we do have, we cherish even more than those with great wealth, because we have so little. So we do hold on to things, our possessions, and we can't take them with us when we go. The only thing that we can take with us into the next life is our virtue. Our virtue and our works on this earth. That's the only thing that will be remembered before God. God will not ask us what our bank account looked like when we died. God will not ask us how big our house was when we went to the next world. He knows this. And he doesn't care. What he will ask us is what we did in our lives. What virtues that we instilled when we got to heaven, to get us to heaven, so to speak. What we do in this world will be remembered in the next. And God only cares about virtue. He cares about love and charity. He cares about our faith and our preaching of Christ into the world. These are the things that we'll be remembered by. But if we have great wealth, if we have great possessions, we can be remembered by how we gave them away. How we gave them to the church. Oftentimes, you'll see these little name plaques around the church of people who donated for something in the memory of someone. They'll be remembered in the next life because they gave. They gave to someone else. They gave to the church. Oftentimes, very wealthy people, the Rockefellers, down in Pittsburgh, the great steel tycoons, they lived a life of lavish luxury, but oftentimes they also gave to the betterment of society. We have libraries and schools and charities that are in their name. They gave, probably was a small amount of what they actually had, but they gave it. And they'll be remembered by it into the next world for the good that they did with their wealth. So if we have very little or very blessed with great wealth, it doesn't matter. What really matters is the effort and the priority that we have in this world today. We take our virtues with us into the next world, but not our possessions. So we always have to prioritize our lives so that we are seeking salvation in Christ, as if we were going to die tomorrow. As if God visited us and says, "Your soul will be required you today." Oftentimes we don't remember this. We don't like to think about the death, that it impedes all of us. All of us are going to be called to the Lord one day. We always think it's going to be later, but we don't know. None of us know. Tragedy happens all the time when we think it's tragedy, but it's just God's timing. And so we have to make an account of what we've lived our lives of doing each and every day. How did we work ourselves into heaven? You know, in the Protestant world, they often look down upon Catholics. We hear that often, that it's not just faith, that Catholics believe that faith and works will save a man. And that in Protestantism, that we only believe that faith will save you alone. And we Orthodox, we try to stay away from that battle. We don't really get into that. But we do know that our faith will produce great works. Because of our faith in Christ, it will move our hearts to do great things. And those great things, God smiles at. His countenance shines upon those who do great things, especially when it comes to charity, especially when it comes to loving our neighbor. So brothers and sisters, we do need to work. We do need to do good works to show that our faith is real, and that we prioritize our salvation above anything else in this world. It will be shown in our actions and what we do in our lives, how we spend our time, preferably in prayer and in worship above all things, but also in how we make our living, and when our living comes, how we use our possessions, whether great or small. So this is the true story of today's parable. It's not necessarily about wealthy men being foolish with their funds. It's about all men not prioritizing their lives for God first and for salvation. So brothers and sisters, let us do the work of prioritizing ourselves for salvation and for God. And each night when we lay our head down on our pillow, think about how we lived our life. Did we do something to acquire the kingdom of heaven today? What did we do in our life? Or was it all for the accumulation of just living for today? Because what is really important is the accumulation of what is to come. In the name of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.